Good afternoon, and I'm wondering whether it is appropriate to say Happy Sark Day. It certainly seems as if I'm uh, that this debate has been on my mind for a while, as you can tell. But so today marks 40 years since the signing of the Sark Charter, and people my age can probably remember when the idea of a South Asian Regional Cooperation Association was mooted around 1982 by the Bangladeshi president, and we can remember the first Sark summit from early television news coverage. 40 years have passed, and South Asians remain ambivalent about official regional cooperation institutions and agencies that I rarely teach a South Asia class where students start the SARC class with a grade higher than D and then they kind of inch it up to B minus, B, etc. Our lives are ever more mutually entangled while our skepticism too grows unabated. Um, Today's extended session features Dr. Asha Hans, who will provide an overview and reflection on climate issues as embedded in other intersections in this region, as well as some thoughts on where to go. This will be followed by a closing of valedictory message from Ambassador Esila Veerakoon, who served as SARC Secretary General from 2020 to 23. The floor will then open for questions and answers and discussion. Let me start by introducing Dr. Asha Hans, who is also a founder of Sansrishti, one of our outreach partners, and a long-time collaborator of mine on many, many, many projects. Asha Hans is former professor of political science and director, School of Women's Studies, Utkal University. She is the founder of Sansrishti, a gender resource center. Her research work has focused on peace and gender. In recent years, she has worked on climate change and gender as well. She has co-authored the book Engendering Climate Change Learnings from South Asia in 2021, followed by articles on encountering gendered spaces in climate change policy in India, migration and adaptation in the Journal of Migration Affairs in 2019. With Hazra et al. In 2021, Women-Headed Households, Migration and Adaptation to Climate Change in the Mahanadi Delta, India. With M. Anwar Hussain et al., she wrote Governance Challenges in Addressing Climatic Concerns in Coastal Asia and Africa, published in Sustainability in 2019. Part of her work has focused on the impact of climate change on disability. In 2020, she wrote on women with psychosocial disabilities in mental health and climate justice. Um, in 2024, she co-authored with Stein et al. In Lancet Planetary Health, Advancing Disability Inclusive Climate Research and Action, Climate Justice and Climate Resilient Development. In 2025, her latest article was Climate Change, Gender and Disability in Markley Alexander et al., Climate Change and Disability, Academic Press, forthcoming in 26. Um, Professor Hans, over to you, and looking forward to listening.
Thank you, Swarna. It's been always a pleasure to work with you and this has become a habit with the both of us, I think, that we are able to join each other in whatever ventures we do. I like to share my slide, but before that, I like to say a few words on Asia that we live in this with those countries. And one of the things which I did not write, but which Swarna is aware of and many other people, that I work on peace studies and that also, and linked it for a couple of times with President on security issues and climate change. Because the latest figures show us that the amount of climate change that is taking place in those countries wherever there are large wars going on, it's quite obvious that wars are impacting climate change and increasing it. Even nature, for example, the recent volcano which erupted in Ethiopia had the dust coming up to India. So, climate change takes place because of all these changes that are taking place, and we have to put it in that larger context. Hmm. I will now like to share. uh, Sorry. When we're talking about climate change in South Asia, though all the countries have been done, what is quite obvious is that every country in South Asia, there are some similarities which cut across them. We have 2 billion people living in this part of the world. And by, I think, the figures that are there show that by in another 25 years, over 800 million will be coming under the poverty debt, and they will be rising because of rising temperatures and extreme weather. In 2009, I wrote an article on water security, that one of the things that is going to impact us is going to be water. And that scarcity has already shown, and we can see that water is one of the major resources which is not available in South Asia. I won't go into all this in detail except say that the trajectory of climate change in South Asia, as I have divided it into three parts. One, the first from the 1980s for 2 decades, then it comes down to 1.5 decade, and the last one comes down to 1 decade. So there is a lot of vulnerabilities that are increasing in these South Asian countries. And most of them across all these countries, it's not only glacier retreat which comes, for example, in India and Nepal, but it is also drought which cut across all these 7 countries or 8 countries. There are localized floods because of the glaciers that are there, but once the glaciers
Asha,
retreat, so this part of these 3 decades that we have seen, or rather since the 1980s, there has been a clear change in all the countries, whether it is agriculture, whether there is migration because of people not being able to get enough food once the level rises, or it is an economic health crisis. In all these climate changes that are there, one of them which has affected South Asia the most is the rising temperature. Temperatures have risen. If you look at climate change, many people who work on climate change will tell you that 1.5 is the danger zone, starting of the danger zone. But in South Asia, it is now 1.8 of the pre-industrial level. So it's already gone above the 1.5 level. South Asia repeatedly records some of the world's highest temperature. In Jacobabad in Pakistan, it's about 51 degrees. Most of us know that where we live, it's come up to 45 degrees to 50 degrees. The heat wave affects food security. We don't have agriculture goes down. We people cannot work because of the heat. If you look at the road building, people cannot go out. So the working hours that are there, according to ILO, 5% of total working hours are lost because of this. Beside the heat is the monsoons. In all of South Asia, we are all monsoon countries. But where climate change is concerned, it is intensifying the South Asian monsoons. It's not that monsoons were there and they still are there. Climate change has increased the monsoon, and in 2007, 17, 45 million people are affected in South Asia. If you remember, most of you will remember that in Pakistan, there was huge floods in 2022. I think even last year there were large floods that were there. So these floods that are there, they cause losses, economic losses. They also affect people, displace them. I live on the east coast of India, where people have been displaced because of coastal erosion. Huge migration, huge displacement. They go from one place to another place to another place. It takes them at least 10 years to reach the final place where they are relocated either by government or relocate themselves. In Maldives, there has been a lot of sea level rising. Uh, it looks like if this continues, Maldives will no longer exist. So it's become a very, very problematic for these countries. Part of Sri Lanka, part of Maldives, part of India's coast is already eroding. So we cannot take climate change as something that is uh, we look at it only when we talk about climate change or we work on climate change. It's become part of our lives. If you look every year at the urban flooding that takes place, whether it's Chennai or whether it is even Bhubaneswar, where I live, the urban flooding, we cannot go out at all. And this has affected all our work. It has affected our schools, our colleges. People will say that the melting Himalayas, how will it affect someone in South India? Or how will it affect someone in Bangladesh? But we know that where the Himalayas are concerned, the snow melts, and this is what feeds our rivers. Now, if the snow melts in the Himalayas, we can see that in the short term, while we are flooding, in the long term, we will see that the rivers will dry up. In fact, one of the articles that someone had written in one of my books on the Indus showed that the Indus was drying up at certain point of the year. Now you have huge rivers like the Ganges, you have Brahmaputra and Indus, and think of them as drying up. What happens to the water system? What happens to people's access to water? Sea level rise affects Maldives. It affects my coast here in India. It affects parts of Bangladesh. It affects some parts of Pakistan. So it's not only one country. It's not that Maldives will go. It is also that where the coastal erosion is taking place. I live on the coast where there is a place called Southasia, about 100 kilometers from where I live, where 7 villages were wiped out. Now 11 have been wiped out. Every year we hear that these villages are being wiped out. And why is it? Because there is sea level rise. And sea level rise and acidity of the sea leads to less catch of fish. So that means less livelihood, less work for women. So these changes that we see every day in our lives are coming more and more, they are showing. And this is what is happening in Bangladesh, that the salinity, the intrusion of the sea into the land, mean that agriculture is being impacted. In the whole of coastal India, it is being impacted. Mm, for Maldives, 1 meter above the sea level, and the country is no longer exist. Indian cities, they many of them face storm surges. Went to Barampur about 2 months ago and saw that in one village there were 200 people living. Now there was one house standing. Can you believe the amount of destruction that is being caused by coastal erosion and the storm surges? All these are part of the climate change that is taking place, and we have to recognize this. So, the sectoral impacts on South Asia are many: agriculture, water, health, as we said earlier. But here, if you look at the figures, look at the yields, how much agriculture will decline. What will happen to people? Food insecurity, which puts 60% of the workforce at risk. These figures are frightening, and this is only the beginning where climate change is concerned. If we look at 1980 as a starting point of very high climate change, in water, 80% of the region experiences seasonal water stress and groundwater depletion. If I went to Bolangir, a very on the western side of Odisha, the wells didn't have any water. So water depletion means that you will not get drinking water. Health, WHO estimate that 100,000 additional heat-related deaths annually. This year, I was in Europe earlier. There also people were affected by the heat. So it's not only South Asia, it's a global phenomenon, but much, much more in South Asia. That is the danger. Change leads to displacement. And when people are displaced, it means that they do not have the enough amount of livelihood, the amount of money. So what do? They migrate. When men migrate, leaves women behind. So the kind of livelihood loss for women, the double work that they have to do at home, more caregiving, more work, but it also creates agency among them. We cannot forget, we cannot say that women are impacted by it, but we can also see that women learn to go to the banks, women learn to, sell their crops, sell fish. So, this kind of chain that has come in, when migration takes place, though migration on the one hand removes communities from their places. On the other hand, some changes are impacted. Because though women are impacted more, we also see across it that there is a lot of agency. It is women, and even people, not only women as a homogeneous group, but women who are, for example, Dalits or scheduled caste, women from Pakistan who come from tribal areas, or from Bangladesh, the fisher women. These are much, much more impacted. And it also means that gender based violence increases. There are records now. We have already seen that this is not something that was there only on paper, it's there uh, for everyone to see. And there is a lot of gender inequality which increases. This woman, for example, was affected by one of the cyclone Fani, and if all of them are living, they were not living on the beach. The water has moved in. This is what is happening. The destruction of home, the destruction of livelihood. Very poor people live there, fisher people, and they are the ones who are. So biodiversity loss and environmental degradation leads to complete gender change. It also impacts children. In one of the projects that I was doing recently, and we were talking to children, they said, I miss my father. He has migrated. Whole village is migrating. So what do you do? What do these children do? More girls drop out because it's not safe to go. There might be water coming on the way, on the roads. So these kind of things that happen, and the health that affects them due to we are more and more in cities. We are used to heat islands. But now, if you go to the rural areas, also you will see heat islands being produced in some place or the other. In Bangladesh, if you look at the now, everyone does not. Till now, it has been that climate change is impacting us extremely, and we are aware of that. But the best strategies have also been developed by many countries. One of them is Bangladesh, which has not only developed a huge workforce, 65,000 trained volunteers. All over South Asia, people are training, countries are training their people to see that when mortality is concerned is reduced. Mm. But mortality, where I live, for example, we have such a good disaster resilience program, which is part of the climate change, that there has been only one death in the last cyclone that hit us. from a time when 10,000 deaths today to 1,000. So this change has come with new strategies being developed, new ways of meeting disasters that are leading to climate change. We look at salt, new climate resilient rice, you look at food, uh, new housing that you look at in Afghanistan, for example, that is coming about. Local adaptation by fisher people in Bangladesh. In Nepal, where people who used to take cow grazing now have come up with new strategies. So these are the strategies that not only in Bangladesh, but also in India, in Maldives, in all these countries. Mm. In India, Sundarbans um, have where the mangroves uh, come up to a huge level, uh, have been put. If you look at these pictures, even we are now trying to grow mangroves on the whole, all the coast so that the sea level erosion does not take place. These are natural shields, and villagers are now coming forward and saying this is something that they know that will save their lives and save their homes. There are heat action plans. The other day, someone was talking about in Pakistan that there is another city which also has an heat action plan. So does Ahmedabad. Many cities in Odisha we have a heat action plan. In Bangladesh there are heat action plan. So the whole of South Asia is trying to cope with it in many ways. Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan, all of them have some kind of climate resilience that they are trying to, mostly forestry, and climate resilient agriculture, housing, all these are being developed. But what is happening is that you cannot say South Asia. These are small little things, islands where climate change is concerned. We need a broader overarching framework of analysis. We need a broader framework for states to take up, for nation to take up. Even if there are national action plans, many of the national action plans don't work. I will share this PPT with you because this shows what are the best strategies that South Asia have adopted. There's no time to go into all of them, but except that there has been Pakistan's billion trees with tsunami which they have built, for example, extraordinary work. Maldives coral restoration. In Bangladesh, the mangrove that has been. So all these are new uh, climate change issues that have been taken up and strategies that have been developed. Strategies don't come on their own. They come through policies. And the policy pathways that are there that have been developed, right, mitigation, adaptation, regional cooperation, in all these three policies are there across South Asia, not only in this country. The final part that I will look at is look at the Conference of Parties. I was there at the last one in Belém in Brazil. There have been, that was COP30, Conference of Parties, because at where 56,000 people attended. Now, every Conference of Parties has a key milestone. It is where the money is, countries come forward and say, that we are going to see that finance comes in to where people are affected to help them, to see where losses taken place or damages are done, that funds are created. So the Green Climate Fund, for example, many people know about it. Now these are also, there have been a number of COPs, and most of them have looked at adaptation as a major strategy. The common but differential responsibilities is the key word in climate change. It says that where countries are concerned, the North and South, everyone has a different responsibility. If the countries of the North have been responsible for creating the climate change, then it is for them to finance. But we know that where finance is concerned, very little finance, 1.3 million was trillion was promised, but it is nowhere near the site. I was there at COP30 Brazil last month. 56,000 people attended. Wealthy nation responsible for for climate change were there. 1,600 fossil fuel lobbyists were also there. When we talk about climate change, I'm sure others must have spoken in this mm, uh, the the climate change talks that have been given, that there are that fossil fuel has to go. But fossil lobbyists were there at COP30. So what kind of a system do we have globally where people who are talking about fossil fuel are there? This is the Brazil civil society participation that was taken. About 50,000 people who attended were there in full swing. But remember that even at COPs, all people are not allowed to go in. There are blue zones and there are green zones. Blue zones are the ones where who make policy, and green zone are civil society. What came out of Brazil was the COP of Truth, it was called. The Brazilians called it Mutirao. Most of it went for climate action, but blue Mutirao, that means a lot of emphasis on oceans and energy transition, that is solar energy. But no fossil fuel was not mentioned in the declaration of the COP. But South Asia came forward, and many countries of South Asia at COP together spoke in a united voice that climate change has to change. So, finance and climate change, rich countries have reached the benefit and they should be paying for it, but this is not done. There's also a People's Summit that took place in Brazil. They said the, we do not want to preserve the logic and dynamics of economic system that prioritizes profit and private accumulation of wealth. We want a just and democratic world, one that ensures good living. If you have climate change and you don't challenge it, the good living is not going to be there. Climate justice is something that has a historical root. The North countries have destroyed the climate, and the southern countries, including the whole of South Asia, feel that they must come in with fund, the Green Climate Fund. And the last COP that was there in Baku in Azerbaijan last year had the target we have been set at Belém in Brazil is 1.3 billion. And but no one says who will give, how much. It still remains something that we have to do. Coming to the final side, South Asia is highly vulnerable, but deeply resilient. We have to believe that it is people. Who does that? Does the government do it? The government is the overarching who makes the laws. But where we are concerned is social justice, is people. It is the networks across South Asia which have been working towards climate resilience. And especially the most affected are the tribal, the indigenous people. In Belém, they were there in large numbers, and it is they who will need our support. And I think any writing that we do, any kind of, we talk about social justice, we must think of the indigenous people and what changes we can bring so that they are not affected, their land, their lives are not affected. I hope I'm on time.
Exactly on time. It's actually brilliant. Thank you. Do you want to unshare your screen? Yeah, great. See you then.
I've shared my PPT and I rushed through it, so lots of people will, if they want, anyone wants it.
It will also be on the video, Asha,
Okay.
so people can watch the video and get your slides.
Okay.
As we move to the next, let's see, remove the spotlight, adjust my screen. Second. I have, yeah, there we go. I would like to, as we move to the next part of this, I want to invite Ambassador Sileruan Veerakun. Actually, not invite him. He has a video, and then he will join the discussion. So I'm going to introduce him, and then invite Chamika to play the video. Ambassador Veerakun was the 14th Secretary General of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation from March 2020 till September 2023. He has also served as the Senior Additional Secretary to the President of Sri Lanka and Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka. His 35-year diplomatic career includes serving as High Commissioner to India and Ambassador to Norway. He held key positions as Deputy Chief of Mission in Washington, D.C., Chargé d'Affaires in Tokyo, Deputy High Commissioner in London, and Deputy High Commissioner in Canberra. He has served in Sri Lanka missions in France, Malaysia, and Seychelles, and in various capacities in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including as Director General of Economic Affairs and Director General of the East Asia and Pacific Division. Mr. Veerakun also served the government of Sri Lanka as Secretary, Ministry of Tourism, Development and Christian Religious Affairs, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Housing, and Additional Secretary, Ministry of Economic Development. In appreciation of his long-standing support and dedication towards improving the lives of children and youth in South Asia, Mr. Veerakun was presented the UNICEF Award Responding Today for Tomorrow in Kathmandu in February 2023. He is a founding member of the Sri Lanka Maldives Friendship Association and member of the board of directors of the India Sri Lanka Foundation. He received his primary and secondary education at St. Thomas College and Royal College, Colombo, read for an honours degree in economics at the University of Kelaniya, and completed his postgraduate studies at the London School of Economics. Chamika, will you play the video, please?
Madam Convener, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to share my insights on this final day of the South Asia Lectures 2025, which is also SARC Charter Day. Today marks the 40th anniversary of the adoption of the SARC Charter. While it is a day of pride, it is also a day to reflect on the journey of SARC, the achievements made, and the challenges faced. It is also a meaningful occasion to reflect on our shared regional identity and the collective future we must shape together. At the outset, I wish to express my deep appreciation to Dr. Swarna Rajagopalan of Chaitanya for curating the South Asia Lectures 2025 series on the theme of climate policy and climate justice. I also wish to acknowledge Mr. Ravinath Aryasinghe, Executive Director of the Regional Center for Strategic Studies, Kimal South Asian, and Sansristi, the outreach partners of this important project. South Asian country is unique in its geographical features, socio-economic conditions, and political trajectories. Yet, we also share deep socio-cultural ties, interlinked economies, and historical bonds. The sentiment of South Asianness, a sense of belonging that transcends national borders, is especially relevant to today's discourse. Climate change, more than any other challenge, reveals how interconnected we are, whether it is rising seas, melting glaciers, erratic monsoons, intense heat waves, climate-induced migration, black carbon or the South Asian brown cloud, Himalayan permafrost. South Asia faces these impacts as a region. The catastrophic weather conditions that Sri Lanka experienced last week is another reminder of the accelerating threat of climate emergency. This discussion takes place in the backdrop of COP30 held in Brazil a couple of weeks ago, where the global community issued a call for humanity to unite in a collective effort to confront climate change. Nearly 200 countries reaffirmed their commitment to the Paris Agreement, reminding us that no nation can face this crisis alone and that global problems require collective responses. However, the progress on the climate front after COP30 appears to be more incremental than transformational. Within this global context, South Asian climate-related initiatives, particularly the South Asia Cooperative Environment Programme, SACEP, and the SARC Action Plan on Climate Change remain highly relevant. Both are aligned with the global climate regime and continue to provide frameworks for regional climate diplomacy. The SACEP Secretariat, based in Colombo, is the only intergovernmental organization in South Asia specifically mandated to work on environmental protection, natural resource management, air quality, and sustainable development. Its governing council has consistently met since 1982, with the most recent meeting held in 2024 in Bhutan. Notable initiatives such as the South Asian Seas Action Plan and the Mali Declaration on the Control and Prevention of Air Pollution reflect the potential for collective environmental governance. Of course, we recognize that many of these initiatives, after promising beginnings, have sometimes receded in the face of geopolitical rifts. Yet, there remains an enduring interest among South Asian nations to overcome these divides and work together on shared concerns such as climate adaptation, environmental protection, and sustainable economic development. This lecture series has highlighted how deeply climate change intersects with politics, economics, human rights, and cross-border cooperation. It has also reminded us that the climate crisis presents not only challenges but opportunities for collaboration and renewal. As we look to the future, I believe that we must make greater and more strategic use of the SARC Action Plan on Climate Change adopted at the 16th Summit in Thimphu and the SACEP framework to prepare for, adapt to, and mitigate the accelerating impacts of climate change. But beyond these, there are several areas where South Asia can and must advance further. First, we need a regional climate resilience architecture, one that unifies early warning systems, strengthens disaster response mechanisms, and establishes shared platforms for climate science, meteorology, and data exchange. Early action saves lives, and coordinated planning reduces economic loss and human suffering. Second, we must prioritize cross-border water and river basin management. Our great rivers, the Indus, Ganges, and Brahmaputra, are lifelines for millions. As climate change promotes extreme weather events and intensifies floods, droughts, and glacial melt, cooperation becomes essential. SARC can serve as a constructive platform to support sustainable, equitable, and peaceful water governance. Third, we must prepare for climate-induced migration, a growing reality for the region. Sea level rise, salinization of coastal land, extreme heat in the plains, and extreme weather events are already displacing communities. We need regional frameworks that uphold human dignity, protect rights, and provide humane, coordinated responses to climate-induced mobility. Fourth, South Asia has the potential to lead in the global green transition through renewable energy cooperation, including regional solar, wind, and hydropower grids. We can enhance energy security, reduce dependence on fossil fuels, and create green jobs across the region. The experience of environment-friendly, modern-day living from the various parts of South Asia must be shared. Fifth, we must recognize the critical role of youth, academia, and civil society. South Asia's young population is one of its greatest strengths. Universities can collaborate on climate research, civil society can drive public engagement, and our youth can lead innovation and advocacy. Their voices must be integrated into regional climate processes. Lastly, we must strengthen the institutional capacity of SAARC and SAARC. This includes ensuring predictable funding, regular ministerial meetings, and a depoliticized approach to environmental collaboration. Climate action must be treated as neutral ground, an area where cooperation can thrive even when other avenues face challenges. Perhaps it is time for us to consider a South Asian Climate Compact, a renewed collective commitment to safeguard our environment, protect our people, and uphold climate justice. Such a compact would reflect our shared vulnerabilities, our shared responsibilities, and our shared aspirations. In conclusion, climate change is not merely an environmental issue. It is a human issue, a justice issue, and ultimately a regional peace and security issue. The future of South Asia depends on our ability to act together, to imagine boldly, and to uphold the principles of solidarity that define our region. SAARC must continue to strengthen its institutions and ensure that its activities yield tangible benefits for the people of South Asia. Regional cooperation is the only answer to South Asia's mounting ecological challenges and dealing with climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Uh, the floor is now open, and we have approximately 40 minutes for discussion today. Uh, I know there are already questions in the chat. We will work our way through the questions and comments, and I especially invite previous speakers to share their thoughts as we start to wrap this exchange up. So with that, let me go to the chat. And, you know, the questions I will assume are primarily addressed to Professor Hans, but others are also welcome to engage, of course. So, there is a discussion that precedes the questions. So I'm going to start with the question from Atika Hassan. Can we understand climate displacement as an issue of climate justice in the region? And then there's a second question. Do you think a regional adaptation strategy policy is possible for South Asia, especially in the context of climate displacement? Maybe something similar to the Kampala Declaration on Migration, Environment and Climate Change? And are there any regional strategies or country-specific strategies at present that can prove to be useful solutions for tackling the problem of climate displacement in the region? So this is completely up your alley, Asha. So I will leave it to you to answer and then wait for other.
When we have been doing climate justice and climate change for the last few years, one of the first thing that we have seen that displacement is a major issue. But it is also linked to migration, as I said. You cannot have one without the other because wherever there has been huge displacement, there has to be migration because the poverty increases of the people. There is very little land left. Governments are not still prepared for relocation. Yeah. In fact, if you see in the whole of South Asia, how many relocation plans are there? Very few. You can see minuscule ones. But there are also good positive answers, I think. One of them is from Afghanistan, where the early warning system has been set up. So there are in South Asia good and the bad, both of them. Mm, Because climate change is still new, because it's been there, suppose it's been there for 1 decade or 2 decades. It's still, in terms of policy, it's just coming into its own. The national action plans are there, but policies are few. So if you do not have overarching policies, if you only have national action plans, it's not enough because your thought is not there. What is climate change? How do you meet it? These issues are not discussed by policymakers. And that is why one of the reasons why policy today, when we're talking about displacement and linking it to migration and climate change, so little is there for us to go ahead. Even the research that is there is now increasing, but it was still not there over the few years that I have worked. No, we had to go to the field to see what is happening. And I think what we need to still do, there are people here whom I can see who have worked on climate change in the field. Mm, They are the ones whom I think we have to call upon and say, like if Swarna, you make a call to them, that come up with something on climate policy that will help governments. Governments are still not ready to do the kind of policies that are needed or in demand. They're not comprehensive. They are whatever is there is very small. Mm, and one of the reasons is that climate change was a science subject. It was not a people subject. It is now that social movements are coming forward and saying, okay, climate change is people. It might be science, but we need to link that science with people. We need to take people science to the forefront. I think this is what is needed and the changes that we have to create. So we need a policy on climate displacement and migration, but policies are many already existing on displacement and migration. The climate component has to be included in them. That's what we need to do. And we have no SARC to work with.
So there is actually there are 2 or 3 comments that link up together and then also address Ambassador Veera Kuhn's comments. Think with that. I'll start with Deepa Gyawali. Walking past SARC headquarters in Kathmandu is such a depressing moment. Official SARC is comatose and no sign of any initiative from any official end to bring it back to health. However, taking up from Professor Hans's presentation, South Asian collaboration at civic, academia, and business levels are alive. What more can be done by these 2 social solidarities to put pressure on official SARC to bring it to life? Now, um, this is kind of parallel. This is, I think, the common understanding that we have, but Ambassador Veerakun's comments were slightly different and suggested that there's a lot happening that we don't hear maybe enough about. So Lalita Ramdas says a South Asian climate contract sounds wonderful and an idea whose time has come. And earlier there was a comment on it was essentially how are we going to build the cat? How are we actually going to go from here to that regional compact? And I invite you, Asha, as well as Mr. Veerakun, if he's still there, to maybe come in and comment on this because I think always as we close the what lectures, the how lecture, the how question becomes important. So now we've amassed all of these bits and pieces of information and we are enthused and we are connected, but then how do we maybe align these two official and civil society uh, journeys in some way? So maybe you can start since, and then he can come in if, if he's there.
Someone else going to come in, Sarna?
Ambassador Veerakun, but you can start with some thoughts first, maybe.
It's just that, if there were 56,000 people at the Conference of Parties in Brazil, not very near India, not very near South Asia, but there are lots of South Asians. And they did meet policymakers, they did create change. And climate change is something, it's becoming political, but it was more scientific. So there were places where you could slip in and make those changes. I think we need to look for those niches, those gaps that are there in policies. And that is where, if not a SARC on a government basis, but a people SARC is needed. You need an action from the people. And I think that is very important. And that is what can create the change and put pressure on governments who are willing to change at this time, because climate change is creating havoc on their productivity, on the kind of income that the countries are losing. So that is why it's very important. And I think here people's movements will be, I think, welcome also. And I think people like Lalita, etc., Amdas can come in and see what we can do in creating that political change and RCSS, because they are the ones who can push for policy change.
Let me jump in and share a thought on this question which you raised. I think today's presentation, the first presentation by Asha, has brought out how some of the things each countries have done well. And that is a good starting point, because very often we are we are critical about ourselves, overcritical sometimes. But if we are willing to learn from the good things of each other, maybe that provides a platform to develop. At the same time, the mistakes we each make also give each other early warning as to what not to do. I mean, Sri Lanka's, as much as the crisis Sri Lanka faced this last week, the reaction and the support which has come from all parts of the world, particularly our neighboring countries, whether it's India, most immediately, then Pakistan, Bangladesh, Maldives, every country has been in one way or another helping out in the recovery process, providing facilities which we have had difficulty to muster given the magnitude. So I think a compact should include all of this. And there are models to be followed, like the Migration Compact, the Global Compact on Migration, the Global Compact on Refugees, which was a UN thing. Unfortunately, those haven't moved forward because some countries have not kind of signed up to it. But I think in discussing this, maybe the insights which came through this series itself, and my colleague Chamika has been very closely following this, and we would be very happy to help in trying to cull from what has been going on this week, Swarna, and all the speakers, the insights to try to see whether we can put it together. I think it must be done at a people's level, a track 1.5 level, which includes the civil society and some elements of governance. And finally, I think given the reality that most of our countries are so centrally governed, the change has to, the pressure, effective pressure should activate governments to take the actions necessary. And of course, if SARC were to get back into business in a way contrary to the way Deepak was sad about, which I'm sure all of us from that generation of people who had great hope in the mid and late 80s. I was a journalist at the time, so I have covered many SARC summits and I had very lot of memories of that. But to get back there, I think we also must understand that we are all looking for SARC to be an engine. I think SARC was a catalyst, and we have used some of that catalytic ability and wasted a little bit of it as wasted some of it as well.
One of the things that I'm hearing, is actually that we're on is sort of a communication gap, because we're clearly not hearing the things that SARC has managed to pull off, given how challenging functioning is in this region. And at the same time, there is it's also been hard for civil society to communicate with SARC, which is part of why there is so much abiding skepticism about it. But clearly, as you say, these are mutually catalyzing what should we say, energies that we need to, or synergy, I guess is the word for a mutually catalyzing energy. But anyway, I'm going to look for other questions here and see if there are things that people specifically want to address. I'm glad the question of migration has come up. There was earlier a discussion about mangroves. We talked about mangroves in several of the lectures in the last week. But there's also a point that Zakir Farmer's Voice Bangladesh makes about risk-informed development being crucial. And perhaps one of the things that we need to work on together, which also Ravinath has mentioned, is early warning systems. Bhavani says it would be great if we can remain connected as a group and work for our better common future without letting politics interfere. And so the question that I have for all of you, and I actually don't work in this area at all, right? We tend to be enthused and we tend to replicate what is already there. Are there other civil society climate change platforms that are already trying to do some of these things? And is that really the place to start rather than, starting the 17th one? That's my question to all of you.
I think I'm also an academic, Swarna, like you. But where civil society groups are concerned, whom we meet not in South Asia, but at the international level. That is the problem, that where civil society here is concerned, our avenues are not as open as when I would go to New York or I go to Geneva. I talked, like we did in Brazil, we had a South Asia group meeting together. These are the avenues we are taking now. But I think if there are more programs like what you have done, there will be more scope for us. There are some platforms. We had a meeting in Nepal recently where South Asians had come. There was an earlier meeting in Sri Lanka where all South Asians were there. I think we need more and more of these. I don't know how many there are in India. There are, many of them are very small. And I think we have to realize that where climate change is concerned, grassroots people are much more aware, are getting than the national level or the regional level political groups that are there. If you to go to any of the grassroots, because they are affected directly, so they have to take action. They cannot wait. We can wait. I can write a book in 5 years, but a person who's affected by coastal erosion cannot wait 5 years. It has to be now. So I think what we need to do, look at what is happening, the strategies that grassroots people are adopting across South Asia and share with each other. And that I think would highlight many of the things. Here, what we are doing today is much more academics, much more people at a higher level. We need people at grassroots to talk, and their knowledge is what we need to work on. Their knowledge we need to uh, bring them to highlight them much more at our platforms.
And this is a point that every single speaker has actually made, talking about how, in a sense, there's so much internal diversity that there are no one size fits all solutions, and therefore solutions can only come out of local communities. This has been a common thread in this series. There's a list of initiatives and studies that are being listed in the chat, and I invite you to look at them. I'll try and cull them and put them in the resource page later on. Kiran DM has a question. Can we change SARC to specifically be like South Asia acts on regional climate? If so, how should we move forward to implement such SARC at an early date?
Um, where SARC is concerned, maybe what we need to look at where climate change is concerned in all our policies. No, you cannot have a techno fix anymore. That age has gone. We need many more policies where it has to come up. I cannot have just now Lalita said, what about PIPFT? Why are we not talking about that? Is a Pakistan India forum. We talk, and that is, I think, one of the avenues we need to think about. And it cannot be done one only step. It's multiple step, multiple issues, because it's no longer one issue. It's not only heat, it's floods, it's where coastal erosion is concerned, or where the heat that is increasing. How many people are dying with the heat? Every year we are facing that. You and I might have an air conditioning, some of us have. What about the poor people who have no air conditioning and are working on a road, laying a road? Imagine 45 degrees, laying a road means it goes up to 55 degrees, which a human body cannot bear. That is why the amount of deaths that are there. We have to look at it as a very serious thing that is increasing day by day. And all avenues. We cannot leave it to one group or those who are working only on climate change. If the migration compact, all these IOM have to look at it. FAO, they must look at these.
I don't actually see new questions in the chat. There are requests for follow-up. I will update the resource page, and we will, anyone who's expressed that interest, we will try and reach out to at some point to connect you. But this is also not something that I can or RCSS or Santrishti can. This has got to be an every one of us effort. if the lectures have moved us and informed us, then this can't be dependent on someone else starting something. So I say to all of you and to myself, if this is something, there is something that each of us can do about any of this, then we should do it without waiting for a better opportunity. And I'm going to now invite uh, Ravinath Aryaseha to come and say a few words before we wrap the series.
Well, all I want to say is a very big thank you to all those who participated in this series. Uh, Particularly, I want to commend Swarna for this initiative, RCSS, which I have joined very recently, was delighted when she mentioned this, and we straight away said yes over the first interaction we had since I came back. I assumed duties and was connecting with her, I think, after about 20 years. So I think it shows that you can help processors when there is a will. And I want to also thank all the speakers from each of the countries. I was able to follow some, but I have kept track of what has been said. And like I said, I think the way this can be constructively factored in both at the different levels is by trying to look at what has worked and what hasn't, and try to, as Swarna just said, each one go do what they can in their own local communities, and from there at regional levels, at local, I mean provincial levels, and then country levels. And at the regional level, there are many drivers where you already have still some dynamic going on. The programming committees of SAC are still active, and I think that might be one way to keep the ball in play while the higher levels sort themselves out. Because I think, I mean, like I said, whether SARC may have failed as an engine, but it has not necessarily failed as a catalyst. We are brought together in some way because of that spirit. And it is what we do with it that matters. I hope that the South Asian lecture series will provide that kind of catalytic dynamic for us to take these forward here on climate change, but also on other issues. And I want to assure that RCSS will stay engaged and connected. And I also reach out to any of those who might have been alumni of RCSS to please contact us. We are keen to reconnect with some of those who might have been at some point or other had shared some experiences with us. So thank you again, Swarna. Thank you, Asha, and thank you all those who led us over the past few days.
Thank you.
And a thanks to Chamika from my side, and well, I'm sure Swarna will endorse it
I'm going to
for
do that now.
the work she has been doing to keep this going.
Yes, absolutely. I have a long list of thank yous, and I think that is absolutely the most appropriate way to end anything. As I said at the beginning of this was learning platforms in South Asia are few and far between, and they're not accessible unless you register for a degree course somewhere, which not all of us can do. So creating such platforms has been a long-standing dream. And when I figured out that this was this was a way that was possible for us to do, I really, really wanted to put a lecture series together. But you know, there's just me here, and it seemed like such an outrageous thing to want. So my first thank you is to Asha Hans, who I wrote to and I said, shall I do this? Does this make sense? And she said, why not? So the point of departure for this is Asha and Sansrishti, and none of this would have happened if she had not answered in that way. Then I want to thank every speaker, most of whom had never heard of me before. I invited them. You responded to cold call invitations without asking 10 questions and just said yes and made this real. And um, I have been reminded over and over about all of the fables around the world about the waves of the ocean parting when something has to happen. And that is what everyone has said, oh, you took so much trouble, but that is what this has felt like. Everything just happened and it happened because of all of you. Then I want to thank RCSS, Hemal South Asian, and Sansrishti, who stood by my individual effort and gave me the confidence to start announcing the series because I had all the ducks in a row, but I was still like, really? Is this possible? Can this happen? And once they came in and said, we will partner with you, that gave me a lot of confidence. And you have been the wind beneath my wings. And RCSS, I want to say especially because Chamika has walked with me in the final stretch of testing, YouTube streaming, recording, hosting with me every single day. And so, definitely, with or without the prompt, you're very high on my list of thank yous because uh, it was wonderful to work with you on this. And I also see, we talk about youth and the next generation, but I see that leadership because I've been working with you all. We had over 300 registrations for this series, and a very good number have attended every single day. Thank you for reinforcing my belief that we South Asians are interested in regional understanding and regional cooperation and looking for regional solutions. Notwithstanding our performance of cynicism and the low grades we think it is fashionable to give ourselves as a region, the fact is that we really want South Asia and SAARC to work because we get at some level that this is the way forward. So, thank you to all of you for registering and for coming every day. And, finally, just thank you very much, everybody. I'm very, very grateful to you. And if all goes well, we will do this again next year, uh, if the universe permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadhna, for creating this platform for us. Thank you so much.